Well, good morning and welcome to Doppler'S Gear Garage. What the heck is that over there? Get out of the frame. There we go. Well, good morning. How you doing? My mic's on. It's Saturday morning. I'm Doug and welcome to Doppler'S Gear Garage. In case we haven't met, we talk about guitars, gear, software, recording, coffee, and anything else that is not about politics and religion. Because we don't do that here. We can't talk about the politics of guitar playing, though. All right, well, first of all, in case we haven't met, my name is Doug. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about a range of things. I'm a guitar teacher by day, if you will, a tone tweaker by night. That sounds weird. But the thing is that those two worlds have an interesting way of intersecting. First of all, Brett, great to see you. Good morning, my dear friend. Hello, hello, hello. Dan, the man with the eye. Look at you. So it is a non-original 57. That is to say, this is had a little bit of a modification done to it. And basically, these are stickered PAFs, and they are... This is what you would call a Les Paul conversion. So, yes. Well, I guess we're going to go down the rabbit trail, so I'll take that bait. So let me just hit the pause button there for a quick second and let y'all know that one of the things I'm going to try and do today is make a couple of notes as specific questions come in so I can have a little list of stuff that I don't miss. If you happen to ask a question and I miss it, ask it again. And if you're watching this on the replay, well, then, no questions. Armando, what's going on, my man? How you doing? What's up with you? Great to see you. Buenos dias, muy buen amigo. All right, first of all, I'm going to take a quick rabbit trail. No, I'm going to finish introducing this, and I'm going to come back to the Les Paul conversion bit in just a moment. LP conversion. All right, so the deal is, Albert, what's happening, my man? Great to see you. Hello, 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 hello. There we go. So I think this guy... so my bad. This is probably a 54. And the serial number is still visible, although I haven't verified the serial number other than, I knew what this was. That is to say, silly me, I haven't gone back in and looked at, it starts with a 4. So that probably means that's why it's a 54. Sorry, I should know a little bit more about this before I start pulling the guitar out. But you hit me with a side swipe. Tony Lucchese, good morning, my man. All right, in any case, Albert, this is a much treasured, much loved guitar. All right, Focus Fox is out. Good morning, all you chatty folks. All right, so here's the deal. What we want to do today is there's this strange intersection between the playing and the tone. So I want to talk a little bit about chords and kind of working with... and kind of how your tone and your chords, there's an intersection, right? Because most of this talk on YouTube is about, well, here's about what's wrong with your playing, and here's what you need to do, and go buy my course. And then there's all this, well, there's this preset, and you go do this, and then you tweak this tone and whatnot. But, the intersection of the two are really an important part of this. So one of the things we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at, let's see if that's the right window. There we go. We're going to be hanging out a little bit in the ToneX editor, which dropped this week. I did a video on that, but the idea is we haven't gone totally ToneX, although we kind of have. But it's more a matter of the idea of tweaking tones and kind of how your playing reflects that. The other thing is, yesterday in my teaching, because I teach on I teach on Thursdays and Saturdays, but yesterday, all the people that I bounced to Friday because I pulled an all-nighter doing this crazy video. That's 2 all-nighters 2 weeks in a row. What am I thinking? So it's a passion, but the deal is that as I was working with my students, one of the things that I really talked about was chords. And, it's not like chords aren't talked about, but the idea of there's a video that Tim Pierce put out where, and the title, I haven't watched it, but I've got it saved in one of my million browser windows open, where he's kind of talking about, alluding to what do pros, quote unquote, see when they look at the neck. And, for me, although that wasn't riffing on that idea definitely got planted in my head. And what I really wanted to share with my students is I don't talk about that much. When I look at the neck, what do I see when I see a chord? And it's a little different when I see a simple bar chord like that. Well, I know that's a 1-5-1-3-5-1. And by the way, if you happen to have your guitar handy, I encourage you. Chris Alexander, good morning, my friend. Paul Richard, hello, hello. Hello, hello. Tony, I was thinking about you this week, so it's a pleasure to see you. I hope that move has gone well, my friend. I love that photo. But when I play this chord, it's a 1-5-1-3-5-1. And the great thing about that is if you know your triads, as in G, B, D, A, C sharp, E, B, D sharp, F sharp, C, E, G, and this is 1-5-1-3-5-1, if that's G, B, D, that's going to be a G, D, G, B, D, G. If there's 1-5-1-3-5-1 and at A it's A, C sharp, and E, that means this is A, E, A, C sharp, E, and A. B, D sharp, and F sharp, B, F sharp, B, D sharp, F sharp, and B again. C, E, G, C, G, C, E, G, C. It means that you have all that insight. Now, when I play this chord, and I don't play this chord that often, that information is in the back of my mind, but I'm generally thinking of this guy as just a shape. When I play this guy, you'll see me use that chord way too much, but I kind of love it. It's basically a sus2. So 1, 2, and a 5 to that natural 3. And that, because I'm thinking the 2 to the 3, I'm not just thinking about a shape, I'm actually thinking about that's my 5. I'm hearing the tension of my 2. Because you don't necessarily want to sit there, you either want to go to the 1. And one of the things I've been really messing with, I don't like atonal chromaticism. It's not my thing, but I didn't really like the way that sat. So I'll ignore that little bit there. That, by the way, is G's my tonic. That's a flat 2. We're going to ignore that. So when I see that, I'm thinking of the chord in a much more modal way. So we're going to spend some time talking about that. Griffin Gaines, good morning to you. Hello, hello, hello. From the gym, look at that, building your chops and your guns. Braxel, good morning, my friend. Okay, so, but the thing is, the sound that you've got in the midst of doing all of that also plays a role. So, thanks to Chris Alexander and all of you, we've kind of gone down this tone rabbit trail over the past couple of weeks of talking about reverb and compression. And so, the interesting thing is that, one of the things I love about doing this is that we discover stuff together. That's really one of the organic chemistry things that happen here. Is like, I may come in with some ideas of what I want to kind of riff on, but in the process of jamming on these ideas, we kind of end up someplace that's always different than when I imagined where I was going to start. And that's really exciting because, I think we're all creative, so the ability to leverage the creative process is kind of cool. By the way, conspicuously placed right there is the amp that is going to answer all my problems, because it would be unfair not to talk about the Triple Crown. So in the midst of the conversation that we've been having for 3 weeks now where we've been talking about the idea of using compression with your rhythm guitar tones to try and get them. And my favorite new phrase for the week is, first of all, we've talked a little bit about transients. And by the way, if you're new here and it seems like we're rambling, all this stuff is tethered together. So tighten your seatbelt. But the deal is, because it really is, I've been on this quest to find really the perfect rhythm guitar tone. For me and for you, the rhythm guitar tone is such an important part of kind of what we need to have to make, when we play melodies or somebody singing over our music, really work. The way and that rhythm guitar sits against the bass, the drums, and frames the vocal or instrumental guitar melody is so incredibly important. And so I've kind of come to this realization, and I've got a buddy named Brian Kehoe who works at Dunlop. He's actually my artist relations handler, totally calling him out. And so he and I got on the phone as I was on my way down to the Dream Theater concert. We had this conversation about, that kind of extends out of one of the conversations we've been having here with rhythm guitars. Like, you want to use some compression, but you don't want to take away the attack of the pick. And so one of the things we're going to talk about as we get inside the interface here is that as we look at the compressor, you're going to see, sorry, I've got the right, that's the preview window. I need to be here. There we go. As we look at the compressor, I'm messing with the amount of the lower the threshold is, it's actually almost the opposite. I should say, the more I turn this guy, and we're going to see that that's set as at -50, I bring this guy up, that lowers the threshold at which the compressor grabs. Over here, it's actually let's get over to here. Whatever you said. Yeah, there we go. That, it means that is actually a higher threshold, so you have to add more dB for this thing to grab. But the attack here is set at 40 milliseconds. Now, why and why does that matter? That matters because it means that there's a certain amount of time that the attack of the note comes through before the compressor grabs. And as I mentioned in the video that I did this week on the Tonex editor, I kind of liken what it does to the guitar sound as doing a little liposuction on the hips. It's my favorite, probably politically incorrect phrase. In that, we want to hear the attack of the pick, because that's where the beautiful stuff those of you who speak Les Paul know that in the neck position, the word that's been used for many decades, they can get a little tubby. That is to say, a little wide in the hips, a little liposuction. By setting a higher attack time, what you're doing, you're saying, hey, let's let the transient of that guy get in there. But as the note starts to bloom, or you get past that initial moment where, like, you're hearing of the pick attack, then you want to pull it in a little bit. And so I've actually been on the hunt, and I have not found one except for one that does it for bass, which is a multi-band compressor pedal. There is a DBX compressor that's floating around here that I did not get a chance to check before we jumped in, but I actually had a DOD compressor. So I'm gonna share a story with you. This is relevant. One of my favorite things about working in the box is because I can look around this room and I see so many amplifiers that have been captured and brought into the box. The time that I've spent with them, when I work with a model, I kind of understand enough about the original amp that I can kind of begin to do some stuff with the model that leverages that stuff. And for those of us that are older, that's a huge advantage once we kind of get used to swimming around inside the box. That's my swimming around in the box fish imitation, by the way. It's going to be like that today, by the way. But the idea is we take all that experience and we work in the box. And in many ways, because you're not dealing with a loud amp in the room, it's actually much easier to work with as you kind of sculpt tones. But the thing is that experience allows us to navigate that. Years ago, I had a DOD compressor. Not really, and DOD and Digitech, kind of the offshoots of the same parent company. I think currently owned by Harman, maybe. But the thing is that it had a side chain on it. And so in my very earliest days of recording, and some of you know what I'm talking about, you go to do a palm mute, and all of a sudden, you kind of like slapping with the bass. All of a sudden, the input on your recording device freaks out. And in that particular case with the palm muting thing, all of a sudden, all you're hearing is, and that's somewhere between 200 and 400 hertz. And so I just was losing my mind, because when I wasn't palm muting, I really liked where I had the mic placed. It was a 57, worked really well. But as soon as I went to do the palm muting, everything was out of the water. And what's great about those moments of desperation is they usually lead to some sort of inspiration that, if you're lucky, will carry you through several decades of your life. And so for me, what happened was I went like, I've got to fix this. I don't know what to do. And I kind of looked over. I had that compressor sitting there, and I was like, and I knew that it had a side chain. I don't know where I bought that compressor. I don't know how I ended up with it, but somehow I knew that it had a side chain. And basically, it's like an effects loop in a compressor. And what I did is I had this other DOD EQ. It was like a 16-band EQ. And I was like, what happens if I stick the EQ in the side chain of the compressor and I boost the frequency I want to cut? That is to say, when I go to my palm muting and that frequency all of a sudden explodes, what's going to happen is the compressor is going to grab on that. And as I remember, it was 200 hertz. I could be wrong, but maybe 240. It's been a couple of decades. But problem solved. I was like, and the thing is, as I said in this most recent video, it wasn't a stroke of genius. It was a stroke of desperation, right? You're like, holy cow, got to do this. All right. First of all, hello. If I've missed anybody, oh, there we go. New amps. Okay. John, good morning, my friend. I hope you have a great day of lessons. Awesome. Thank you, my friend. Chris, my dear friend. All right. So all that to say, this tone tweaking. Robert Valdez, good morning. Great to see you, my tone and Bay Area buddy. All right, so all that kind of informed me that somewhere in the midst of getting a great guitar sound is the idea that there are going to be times where you want to use compression, but you don't want to mess with the good stuff. You want to mess with the bad artifacts. So what I want to do real quick is I'm going to jump into the editor here, and I'm going to have well, actually, I'm going to make it so you can see it, so it's not so mysterious. And it's not just that we're going to be only talking about Tone X, because we're not. We're using this as a case in point. So I'm going to turn the compressor off here. And by the way, as a general rule, and I can turn it on and off with this little mini toggle here, or this button right here. So here it is off. And here it is on. So ideally, this gain button, or I should say this gain dial, is where you kind of balance the volume, because the compressor can make the volume kind of go down. So obviously, I've brought it up some. So the deal is, there it is. So listen to the, that's the best way to do it. You hear some of it? It's subtle. Because you don't want to kill all the low end. Now I am noticing I'm losing some of the transient there. So this is one of the things that'll happen. That's a great example. That note right there, you can hear a little extra meat on the bone. There, it thinned out. So that was exactly the note that I was looking for to kind of go, this is what I'm trying to do. And I'm not using the compressor to get rid of, and the Corey Wong approach is you actually do mess with the transients. And there's nothing wrong with that because it's a great sound. But in this particular instance, I wanted to preserve all the stuff that makes this guitar special. Now, getting back to that, our buddy had mentioned that, well, I've got a new guitar, a different guitar. And Dan So this is, to the best of my knowledge, and judging by the big 4 at the beginning of the serial number, this should be a 54. And there was a period of time I went on a mad hunt for a 59 Strat. This is obviously not a 59 Strat. And then I got this bug up my posterior about looking for a, so there are a number of gold tops that were actually painted over bursts, and the factory was like, hey, we got an order for a gold top. Spray over the top of that guitar. It was like, and there are a number of, or I should say, flame top Les Pauls that actually are covered with gold paint. I heard about this from a buddy. You probably may have heard me tell the story. He showed up at my old rehearsal space one day with 5 bursts, and I got a chance to play all of them for several hours, and kind of, they're all completely different. And, the interesting thing is that one of the things that he did, which is slightly a no-no, but not so much if you know what you're doing and you present it as such. So ideally, in the original quote-unquote wiring harness, the perfect thing is you have the original pickups in there. But if you got an original pair of stickered PAFs in there, not quite so much a foul on the play if you swap pickups. What he would do was he knew his pickups well enough that he would swap them between guitars. And I was like, oh, no, you don't want to do that. He was like, yeah, I do. And he brought this several, like 3 of the guitars back like a week later. And I was like, oh, and he just knew. It was like, that's why he is who he is. So he's a private collector and, purveyor of guitars. But he really knew what he was talking about. So since then, in the back of my mind, again, many of these seeds get planted over time, and you kind of eventually kind of go, okay. So I decided I need to get a Les Paul conversion, which basically is a poor man's 50s Les Paul. And so the idea is that this particular guitar started its life as a 54 gold top. Hence the wraparound bridge. In, I believe, 57. I should know my years better than that, but that's when they kind of went to the, the non-wraparound tailpiece and bridge. So in any case, which is your traditional Les Paul. And I will say the big advantage of that setup is you can then in turn adjust the tension of that, which is a really big benefit, where with this you can adjust the string tension. That is the more you put the stop bar tailpiece, you lower it into the body, the more it has a kind of a trapeze effect on the string as it's going down like that. And so the tension of the strings will be greater or lesser depending. Many of my teenage years were spent in my Les Paul days messing with the action and kind of getting it so the feel was just right. On this one, it is what it is. And this is a replacement bridge that Gary Brower put on there that's a compensated bridge that plays in tune relatively well, because you don't have individual saddles on this, which is a little bit of a nightmare, but it is what it is. In case the concept of a Les Paul conversion, this would have had P90s in it. The person that I bought this from, or whoever it was that did it at whatever point, put stickered PAFs in here. So it has all the good things. Pretty much if I buy a Les Paul, the first thing I do is put on locking fine tuners, because they pretty much never stay in tune on the G string. Once you start bending, that is, it's just a thing. In any case, this guitar changed my life. Basically, I bought it, and within 48 hours, I'd written the framework of what was going to become the instrumental album that I'm in the process of working on. All tethered together. That amp right there and this pedal are tied together. And perhaps this will affect your tone journey as well. Rhythm guitar. Last week, I did this demo on the Jones Satriani Tonex 1 pedal. And one of the things that I talked about was the rhythm guitars, hard left, hard right. As little gain as you need to get the job done, so you can actually have them quieter in the mix but hear them better. And one of my favorite analogies, we're just going to imagine that this is a float, like when you're fishing. And the idea is I will in turn use a little presence on the top end to get the tone to just float up above the water. So it's not kind of murky, because when it's murky and kind of down below, you have to turn the whole thing up. As opposed to like, hey, you know what, when I've got that little bit of sheen on the top, I can actually keep the fader of that guitar down. And when it's 2 guitars, now all of a sudden some of the drama that's happening in the bottom end, like we were talking about here, starts to impact other things. It sticks its elbows out into the mix. And, the funny thing is generally when I'm crafting tones and coming into the box, I don't like to use stuff. I really want to capture things the way they are in the wild, if I can do that. So I've kind of had to go over this moral things like, well, I don't really want to use a bunch of compression and EQ to kind of trim the guitar. But the challenge is the natural frequency response of the amplifier is why you love that amp and the tone. But every so often to have the right amount of hips, sometimes you get a little bit more of the other frequencies that are around it that you can't sculpt. And I will say this, one of my favorite things, and I'm going to be on these folks to potentially expand this, a couple of things, is let me get into the right thing here, there we go. As you're in the amp section, you not only have controls for your bass, mid, and treb, you have this control where you can choose the frequency that the bass, middle, and treble are on. I about lost my mind, to the best of my recollection, and I could be wrong because it's quite probably in another device that says F and ends with L on it. But you also have the ability to, this is a cube, which is basically kind of once you pick that center point of EQ, how much wider or tighter it gets around that point. And that level of EQ allows you to kind of fine-tune the hips and bring them in around a particular frequency. Let's just imagine that your head is your treble bright frequencies, and your feet are the bass frequencies, right? So as you go up that ladder, it enables you to pick how high that frequency is and in turn bring the hips in a little bit. Ultimately awesome. So in the midst of all this, I spent a good 2 hours looking for a multi-band compressor, because that's one of the things, is basically it's allowing you to choose, like I talked about, where I had that EQ and that compressor working together. Find that frequency that's like, when I'm not going, I love the way the EQ balance was, but every so often you do something that gets a little wide. Or conversely, I love where that EQ point is, but there's some other stuff that's around there. I would love to be able to bring that in. And that's where multi-band compressor can really help, as is a parametric EQ, because that sort of EQ style where you choose the Q is a parametric EQ thing. So, okay, hang on a second. Let me make sure I'm not missing anybody. Okay, so, Gaetano, buongiorno. Pleasure, my friend. Okay, so, all that to say, we're trying to make all this stuff fit. And one of the most frustrating things is to be sitting there kind of laying a track down and kind of going, it's killing me about the rhythm guitar part. So, this amp, my buddy Albert, yeah, that Albert right there. He and I are both based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and true diehard amp fans are always looking at Craigslist. Always. And so the funny thing is I happened to take my eye off the ball for a minute, and he said, hey man, this amp came up, and it sold for $1,400 with a 412 cabinet, which, considering that amp is like $2,700 new, was a smoking deal. But the most important thing about it was, my prayer was this rhythm guitar sound that I was dreaming about, that's more or less kind of a Marshall-y type of a vibe, because a number of the amps that Boogie has made are inspired by things from the other side of the pond. But they've kind of done their own thing with it, which is where Boogie started. They're hot rodders. Sonia, good morning. Great to see you. Hello, hello. Or I know how to say Guten Morgen, but I don't know how to say good evening. So good evening, because Sonia's in Germany. So the idea is that we started on the clean channel. I could already tell, I'm like, there it is. That's the sound. And the best thing about it is I think I'm not going to have to do anything to it. And I'm looking for this perfect rhythm guitar sound. And then by the time we got to the number 2 channel, I was like, there it is. And then the number 3 channel. And so it turns out the guy that was selling the amp, I knew him. So he really kind of then dialed as I was playing, got channel 2 to reflect the volume and kind of vibe of channel 1. And it turned the same thing with channel 3. And I was like, this is probably my favorite amp of the day. So it's a big deal. So look at all you folks saying hi. I love that. So that is to say, rhythm guitar, which is the kind of, this focus what I want to talk about today. And I want to talk, because they're all related. That was not the chord I wanted to play. I wanted to play, oh no, there we go. I wanted to talk a little bit about getting back to this thing about, when we look at chords, I think it's easy. I was thinking about, as I'm kind of working on the preparation of course material. And the great news is now that I'm kind of up and running, like, the YouTube engine is now fired up, and it's like, here we go. YouTube videos every week, right? And then kind of the next thing is going to be Instagram, and I'm leaning towards that there's going to be Technique Tuesday and Theory Geek Thursday, and not always, but often those things are going to meet, and then we're going to cover kind of that stuff on the rebound here on Saturday morning, because they are related to one another. Because, the thing is that if you look at YouTube, you have a tendency to people see that they live in the teacher lane or they live in the gear lane. But the reality is we're all kind of living in all those lanes simultaneously. And this is where the spillover of tone and what you're actually going to play, they're integral to one another. All right. So the deal is, before I mention that, when I see I like to think of this in the back of my mind as I think of it as a stupid chord, right? First of all, there are times when I will play these chords. But I usually like... I like a little bit more flavor because these are just, they're so blockish, and what makes them blockish is that, right? It's that root fifth octave business. You kind of can't get around that once it's in the chord, but thinning it out is there. So one of the other things I want to leave you with, well, not leave you with, but I want to leave with you, is spending some time sitting with a bass note and hearing how different dyads sit. And as I was kind of messing around, I just kind of fell into that, and because I always like to spend a little bit of time preparing for what we're doing here. And the interesting thing is, you're really needing to hear that note. By the way, that little rest before you get to the last thing. I was working with one of my crazy advanced 14-year-old students yesterday, and he is 14, so every so often the unbelievable technical wizardry that he demonstrates on pretty much a weekly basis, it's really actually scary, but in an awesome way. And it's inspiring to see somebody that young an age, and I can go through all the crazy mode stuff, and he's like a talk about the lawnmower effect. He's like a giant lawnmower. He just sucks it up and spits it out. It's just crazy. It's just, but the point being is we hadn't talked a lot about chords, and so I kind of tried to get him to do the subtle thing. It wasn't something that was in his wheelhouse. What was really cool is after the lesson, his dad actually texted me saying how much he enjoyed the lesson, which is really cool because he's a mad shredder. There's, I will be shocked if this kid doesn't become one of those kids that you're like, that guy, and he may choose to not go into a career in music, but it's kind of like, I can't quite see that happen. By the way, it is time. You know what time it is? You know what time it is. It is time, ladies and gentlemen, to raise them up. Where is it that you're coming from, and what is it that you're drinking? It's so good. That was something that Dr. Phil sent. And Griffin, I actually have to fess up. You will know this. So that for it's gone upstairs now, so it's going to make it the next rotation of coffee in the machine. I've been holding up this bag of coffee that actually Griffin sent last Christmas. So he's probably going like, oh, my word, seriously? So I'm looking forward to that. So, Griffin, thank you so much. You're on deck. So where are you coming from, and what are you drinking this morning or this evening, like Sonia? All right. So what I want you to mess with is as follows, is really spending some time with these 6. Now, as I was kind of hanging out with this, there we go, black tea. You know, it's an interesting, I'm going to have to ask you about the black tea because, you know, Richard doesn't necessarily strike me as British. So like the wife, I don't know why I'm pointing at me other than to indicate my wife is from Australia. So like tea is a thing, and it's a carryover from the Brits. But I guess I could see that the French sipping on their tea, but I think much more of it from Ron. What's going on, my man? Coffee and chord practice in Ohio. Come on. All right. So with that point, and by the way, I do have some questions here that my man Chris Alexander sent through. So we're going to get to Chris's questions in a minute. But in terms of chords, one of the things that I like to do is kind of use the tonic and use different bass notes to force different modes. All right, France, come on. So who is KBK 1973? Kareem, what's going on, my man? Good to see you. No, great to see you. That's so funny. You begin to recognize people's nicks. Oh, I switched between tea and coffee. There you go. Okay. So dyads. The interesting thing is I was thinking about 6 being played on this string, and it's an interesting thing that here I'm thinking about this shape right here as the 5 and the 3. There's a Beatles song in there. Rick, what's going on? Great. Okay, hold on. That's not Rich. That's Rick. Great to see you, my friend. Europe. There we go. Come on the move. All right. So this major 6th right there is, I'm seeing it as basically the 5 and the 3 of that chord. But when I go to that chord, I'm seeing that as the 3 and the 3 and the 1 of this chord. So that is to say, it was an interesting thing as I yeah. There we go. Let's see if I can put that idea that I was thinking. Oh, come on. Holy cow, it took me a minute to get there. So, and hearing the bass note movement. What? 4, 3, 2, 5, 1. And kind of using those, how they're kind of, now I can, there I am playing, this guy, a minute ago I talked about using that guy as, so I can literally do this little movement there, although that's not how I used it there. I can use that to outline my 4 chord. There's my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. There's my 4 chord. And there's my 5 chord. So let's say, so somebody else is there holding down the fort on the, imagine you're hearing do 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 na 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 na. So messing with it, and those 6 and kind of knowing they may not necessarily be functioning. Sorry, that was a freshman mistake there. Hold on. Oh, I've got it. All right. I'm so here. Sorry, English. Let me explain something here to y'all because I just made a kind of a freshman mistake. I'm going to take the key of G major. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. I'm going to play sixths harmonized down from the root. So that's my note there. So if I took this note and played it down an octave, that's still going to be G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. And if I went up a third from there, as in G, A, B, there's my 1 and my 3. So if I harmonize like that, but instead of playing that G in the bass, I put it on the top note. So that's one way of playing thirds. However, if I were looking at this G chord right here, and I played, actually I'm going to go to this G chord and I played that 5 and that 3, little NBC there. I guess that might be CNBC now. I digress. So now as we're harmonizing this, it's a little bit more mysterious because you don't actually have the 1. This is the 5 and the 3 of the 1 chord. The 5 and the flat 3 of the 2 chord, 5 and flat 3 of the 3 chord, 5 and 3 of the 4, 5 and 3 of the 5, 5 and flat 3 of the 6, and then flat 5 and the flat 3 of the 7, which is where I went south a minute ago. So you kind of have to know which sixth interval you're choosing in the scale. That is to say, let's see if I can do this in a slightly more intelligent way with my bass note here. Right, okay. I'm going to do it like this. So I'm basically harmonizing these thirds, and I'm inverting that. That is to say, there's a third, there's a sixth. And I'm seeing this as where this was my root, and I was just harmonizing this in thirds. It's the same deal. And that's really what I wanted to get to, which is using these different sixths. It's a great way to evoke emotion. That's a fifth. There are people who do this much better than I do, but this little bit, I'm working on it though. And you start using these strange parts of your finger. I can use all right, for those of you that actually have your guitar in hand, we're using this little 6 shape here. I'm at F and D there. F and D, that's my favorite combination. Sounds so naughty. We're hitting E, F, G, and A. That's a nice little stretcher. And there I'm going E, F sharp, G sharp, and A. So on and so forth. So the neat thing is it really draws some interesting things out, which I just love. All right. There we go. A vanilla flavor, but straight Oh, that must be a brand of which I'm not familiar with, but sounds tasty. Crazy windy outside. There we go. All right, so that gives us the cue for a little bit of, where'd he go? Hiding. There we go. There we go. One of my favorite photos in the world. Chris's question. I think as much as I love the fact that he's wearing the shirt and holding the shirt, I think the look on his face is my favorite part of that photo. I could never get tired of that. He just looks like he's having so much fun. And one of my favorite things is actually having people, well, actually I should be careful to say, having certain people hold and play my guitar. It's not the sort of thing like, hey, let me hand you my guitar. All right, so Chris's questions, gosh darn it. This relates to some of the IK stuff primarily. Really great questions. All right, first of all, will the editor software work on multiple computers, work on the same pedal? The answer is definitely yes. And the other thing is there's a little, inside the ToneX editor, you can actually toggle between two different ToneX devices. So I've got my Satriani pedal and my ToneX pedal. That is the ToneX 1 Joe Satriani limited edition. Let's try and say that 10 times fast. And this is the ToneX pedal. So I can toggle, hold on. I can toggle back and forth between the two of them. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I can toggle back and forth between the two of them on the same editor, which is really, really awesome. Takes a minute to load and a little bit longer on this end of things. But in terms of the technology that's happening in the background, really cool. All right, so yes, there's a question that somebody asked me, can you use the ToneX editor on an iPad? And I have not had a chance to try and download that software. I don't think the answer is going to be yes, but I have yet to find that out. And I can also, I will reach out to the ToneX people and ask them if they're going to be bringing that to the iPad. All right. Have there been any ToneX amps you feel sound better than the actual amps? And this is the $1 million question. And I absolutely love that because, as I mentioned a little earlier, and again, all these things are related. The sound. Oh, hey. Look at you. Fancy pants. Way to go. Congratulations. Those are fabulous amps. Oh, fine. So, this, oh my word, holy cow, is that thing heavy. It's actually one of Joe's amps. So he was kind enough to loan that to me, so that will not be getting captured because that's a no-no. You don't capture Joe's amps, but that's literally is a Joe Satriani signature JVM, and those amps are awesome. And one of my favorite things about that, and the third demo in the ToneX video, the ToneX editor video, I'm doing this thing. Hang on a second. Is that loaded on here? Yeah, it should be. Here we go. I'm going to get a chance to talk about something here. There we go. All right. That amp has a noise gate. I'm going to have to remember what the heck I played. There it is. So inside Joe's amp it has a noise gate, and it's actually one of the coolest features. In that, what I'm doing here, and I want to walk through this because there will be somebody watching this that this will be worth the price of admission. So let me get over here. I am looking at the noise gate. So what I've got is I've got a threshold that is low enough and high enough that it does a couple of important things. What's going to do is that if I have the guitar volume all the way up and I hit the body, you can hear that buzz going. Hang on, let me do this. That's what we're hiding. But the other thing that we want, sorry, let me turn this off, is that when we go... You want to be able to hold those notes, but the idea, you don't want to have to go back and forth between that volume control. So now, and silence. And the point being is the ability to not actually, well, I turned the volume off there, but look, mono hands. It's like you don't move. Guitar stays silent. That is the greatest hat trick ever. And the idea is you finish the note. And if you let up carefully, you hear all the delay and the reverb. So the deal is in the signal chain here, the gate's the very first thing. So it silences all that stuff. Hang on, I got to get in the comment. Because somebody out there went like, oh, that's flipping bad booty. All right, hang on a second. All right. Paul Richard, there we go. Come on. A little collaborative fun. Somebody once accused me of humble bragging, so I don't necessarily know if that's a good thing. Well, I know that it was actually not intended to be a compliment. But the funny thing is that I am very, very fortunate. He was my guitar teacher, as I said in the first ToneX video, like 15-year-old Dougie. So I've known him for a long time. So that relationship goes back. Thank you very much. This amp is very crusty, and I love. Silent like that. I mean, maybe you're not freaking out like I did when I got that to happen. I was like, holy cow. So I ran into that when I was working with the pair of JP2Cs that Maddie and I put together for kind of doing a kind of a small version of John Petrucci's rig. We did it remotely, but I kind of built that here. And I knew that he was using a gate in there, but I kind of ended up doing in one of the demos kind of going, oh, let me try that. And I was like, it's the greatest hack ever. Traditionally, people just use a noise gate because high gain amplifiers, when you actually, and let me turn the gate off here. Hello, turn the gate off. There we go. In this particular case, the noise, what I'm trying to get rid of is not the noise of the amp, it's actually the noise of the guitar, and it was just kind of a hack that I wandered. There we go. F and D. All right. Right on. Thank you, my friend. I knew exactly where you were coming from. So it's exceedingly cool, and so, all right. Focus Fox is back in town. So, first of all, Chris's question was, in terms of the amps, the ability to just inside the box, and this is pretty sure this was a 5150. Yeah, this is a 5150. And the funny thing is that I'm not necessarily the world's biggest 5150 fan. But this guitar really seemed to sing with this. All right, so the point about all of this is as follows. Actually, Joe loaned me one of his 5150s, and I sat here with this thing, and I was like, just didn't really, whatever it is that you feel when you plug in and you mess with the sound, it speaks to you. It just didn't speak to me. However, in the process of massaging whatever that, kind of who I had to become in myself to actually play that, because the instinct of to rush that, every ounce of my creation just wants to rush through that and not take And as I was shooting that little piece of video, you're desperately hoping that the gate doesn't grab. There you go. And when you go to the bottom of the neck, you're wanting it to grab. So it's kind of a crazy thing. All right. There we go. Got it. Voila, magic. There we go. Awesome. All right. So all that to say, inside the box. So again, Chris's question was, are there any amps that feel better than actual amps? I had a much better experience in the box, that is, say, inside the Tonix universe, with the 5150. Now, this particular preset had, I think, a bunch of stuff going into the front end, but the vibe... How much fun is that? Holy cow! So, all that to say, yeah. That said, there is nothing like the magic of sitting with an amplifier. And well, first of all, that particular experiment there was me kind of messing with cobbling the pieces together in the box, and actually having it not be at some crazy room volume thing made it work really well. So Robert, hello. Let me get back in the editor. So this was a stock tone model, which is their lingo for just the amp and cab. And this guy right here, as we get inside here, looking at this, and the description is, it's got a Bosso D1 and a GE7, so that's the 7-band graphic EQ. So, and I'm going to presume all that stuff is in the front end of this thing. So that preset, they were tweaking the crap out of. I can only imagine how much hiss was coming out of that amp when they were capturing it, because you've got all this extra ganky stuff going to the front end, but like. And listen to the sustain. I'm at a reasonable volume such that I can actually have my studio monitors up and running and play and be able to talk and not have to use earbuds or headphones on the show, because it would take all the fun out of it for me. Like, that's a ton of sustain. And in turn, kind of with the gate, I was able to really control it. I was just kind of like, wow, you know. And so the great thing about a tone, whether it's an amp, or in this particular case, kind of cobbling that stuff together until I was like, oh, there's a thing. And then figuring out how I had to play and who I had to become and pull it out of myself. And like, okay, how do I actually make this thing come together? Because I knew what I wanted to do. That last pitch harmonic, because you're bending the note a little tiny bit, that pinch harmonic, it's hard. That's the hard one to get. And man, I was like, wow, 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 blah, 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 and I just kept missing it. And, you know, it's so fun, you know, the idea of how the gear informs you what you have to play. And that's one of my favorite parts about the gear journey, right? And so that amp, almost the exact opposite experience, in that here I got a chance to kind of cobble all the things together, and then I kind of got to figure out what it was that I was trying to do. As the rhythm part goes, I wonder if I can all right, let me try this. One of the cool things, I'm going to just show you one of my favorite little hacks about all of this stuff, because this is really flippin' groovy. Yeah, I think, I think that overdrive was in the capture of that, hence why the labeling was as such. But I want to show you one of my favorite hacks here. So there's one of the things where you can link the cabinets and the head. I'm going to unlink them because this allows you to do something really flippin' cool. So as you go inside, there's a little library icon there that launches this, and on the right-hand side, if you kind of alphabetize this guy's like this, you got all the PV 150, 150. So I'm going to, if I click on that like that, now I can use the down arrow keys on my keyboard. There we go. That'll work. All right. So again, kind of where I had the guitar set and whatnot, not necessarily going for the... All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kill all my reverb here. You're out of there. And I'm going to kill the gate. And so now I'm just going... So that's not necessarily the perfect tone for that, but the idea of kind of go through there and sampling stuff until you can kind of find the right tone. Now, in all fairness, let me go backwards here and let me try that same thing again, because now instead of looking for a tone for a part, let me just go back here. We started there. Let's play this guy. Playing to the part, or playing to the tone, rather. All right, I'm going to add a little bit of noise toys right here because I know what I'm... right, you get the idea of playing to the sound. It's one of my favorite things about kind of working inside the box. Is like you just dial up something, and there, I was trying to keep. Well, hang on. Let me do the last demonstration of that. I'm going to try and keep everything in the signal chain exactly the same. So that is, say, I've got the reverb there. Let me put in a little delay. Let's add some ping-pongy. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to go back in and we're going to try a couple of different amps, and let's see what happens. I have to click first. There we go. And then now you can do the... You go back to the previous one. And sometimes the level will be different. But besides the level, the vibe, you get the point. The ability to just go in and go, hey, let me just swap out this amp, let me swap out that amp, and just kind of let's see what happens. That, when you're working in, again, getting back to Chris's question, have there been any tonic amps you feel sound better than the actual amp? Again, my experience with the 5150 just wasn't great. It was a 5153, I should say. And it just me and that amp just didn't really bond. That happens. It's totally cool. But from P-Cola, I take that as Pensacola. Pensacola, how you doing? Too many ways to fall. Okay. All right. Okay. There is meaning there. First of all, hello. I must know you, so who be you? Who be you? All right. Okay, hold on a second. I'm looking for one pedal that does what you're showing, but has pitch shifting with very little artifacts like the Nano Chord X. I don't want to spend the dollars on the quad. First of all, the Nano, which is hiding over there, is a phenomenal piece of technology. You touched on one singular point. This pedal, although I'm actually running through the other one now, plays the exact same signal chains with the exact same quality. It's absolutely staggering. The trick that I discovered is you got to make sure that the input trim level for both devices is the same. But once I matched the input trim level, I'm like, I didn't record it and I didn't put up an AB box, but I was like, sounds and feels the same, which is just shocking. It does not have that. I will, however, say that it's highly probable that the way this thing works, and I've had this idea that somebody was going to do this probably 5 years ago. It's just like the idea is it's a software receptacle where you just push different algorithms. So in this particular case, you have a set number of effects, much like the nanocortex. You can't really change any of that stuff out, but over time they're going to find ways to substitute those different things. But the idea is that, the different types of effects. So for right now, inside, I don't need to show you. You basically have a digital delay and a tape delay, and either just like single subdivision or a ping pong effect for both those, if you will, algorithm voices. And that's basically 4 options of the delays. That's all you've got for now. But considering that's where they're starting, the ability to then have, add some EQ on that potentially, a filter, it's not much of a software footprint to be able to do that. And the ability to kind of get in and tweak that stuff, my guess is that sooner than later they're going to be adding other stuff. So to your question about being able to do the pitch shifting, I do not, and there are, IK has some standalone effects pedals that I do not have at this point. So I don't know if they have a pitch shift in there. But, that's one of the things that the Nano does really well. It's also one of the things that the Fractal people do exceptionally well. And I take it such that you're able to, if you walk into a situation, needs to be an E flat. I'm kind of curious, Bobby, what is the pitch shifting there? Why are you wanting it? And when you're talking about very little artifacts, for those of you who don't know, sorry, my presumption is everybody knows all the same things about all this tweaky stuff, and some people don't. So why would you want pitch shifting? Traditionally, when people use pitch shift, it was either build harmony. Think about Owner of a Lonely Heart. That's the kind of parallel fifths on the guitar solo when that. The Eventide was the first diatonic harmonizer, so you could actually not only have thirds, you could have multiple intervals, and you would pick a key, and then it would note a track in that key. The other thing about a harmonizer / pitch shifter is that you can then just set it so it's a very slight amount, quote-unquote, detuned, and then you add a little bit of modulation to that, and it's a brilliant chorus. Brilliant. But as opposed to taking a delay and modulating that, it's actually taking a second version of your note that is not in tune and modulating that. So literally, the center point of the modulation is not unison with the note that you're playing. So as an end result, it has a particularly unique, nuanced voice. It's a YouTube video in the midst of all of that. All that to say, there's some interesting things that happen in that. Eric, how you doing? How's the finger coming along, my friend? I hope well. Great to see you. Thanks for joining, my friend. If you turn the volume down, is it clean as a real amp? So it's... The other thing about this particular guitar, for better or worse, it can be a little bright. So I almost always, which I don't right now, have the bridge pickup. I back off on the tone controller. That little bloom right there. My signal is wigging out. What's going on? What does that mean? Okay. Okay now. Okay. Huh. All right. Always, the feedback's always great. Mendoza Andres. ¿Cómo está? Buenos días, mi amigo. Hola. Okie dokie. All right. When I tune my Strat to E flat because it sounds better to my ear than E, being able to push the bottom and go to E tuning seamlessly with no artifacts. Okay. Gosh, there's a YouTube video there. Okay. Back it up. Okay. Do me a favor. First of all, Wes, hello, my friend. Oh, awesome. Killer. Holy cow. You ordered the kitchen sink. I bet the weight is killing you. Holy cow. And the weight's going to kill your UPS driver. FedEx. Sweetwater uses FedEx. Way to go, dude. Woo. Smoking. All right. I could have had a Strat. Hang on a second. I was originally going to start the show with Pinky. But we're going to go to Pinky right now. Now, there's a problem with Strats. Ooh, what a great video! The problem with Strats. It sounds like a Star Trek episode for those of you that speak Trekkies. By the way, for those of you that don't know to do this, I just did something. What I did was I gently just pulled this cable out here just a little bit because that will effectively mute the input as I go to do this. In theory, we won't hear. There we go. So that was silent. Now, the other thing is, by the way, this is something that I hate. Get over here. I just loathe it when I see people using a right-angle jack on a Strat. I think it just looks like the silliest thing. So I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to do it. The other thing is it's quite difficult to get it out once you actually have done that. All right, what we're going to do here is we're going to pull up a different preset. So let me get over here to you. Come on, where are you? There we go. That's just crazy. All right, so Anil, good morning, my friend. It's very interesting. You usually don't show up until right around this time, which I just love. So not that I'm in any way condemnatory. The fact it's just kind of like this is your window, which I love. So this guitar, there somewhere around the house here, it's been temporarily retired. There's certain instruments that if I play them too much in demos, because I'm now kind of back and because I'm doing all this YouTube, quote unquote, all this, I'm doing an increased number of YouTube videos because there's going to be a weekly video, because that's what you do when you turn on the lights at YouTube, separate from streaming, right? But I have to be careful where if I use certain guitars, I have a tendency to play certain types of things on those guitars. So the other guitar that I'm referring to is a road-worn Strat. It's a white guitar. It's actually, for the money, is a fabulous guitar. And one of my buddy, I knew I wanted one. There's a 62 or 64, which is the one that I own. There was a 57 that I tried out that I drove all the way down to San Jose, and it had a buzz on the neck, and the guy knew it. And I was like in a way, I'm like, I don't know if we can get this out. And I was like, you know, if you have a guitar that noticeably there's like a bad fret or something going on, and you know, you put it up on Craigslist and don't tell people it, and they find out when they show up and play the guitar, you kind of go like, that's a guy I don't trust. So I was like, I got back in the car and I left. But my buddy Chris up in Sacramento, I had him kind of keeping an eye open for a road-worn Strat, and he brought it down, and I was in the studio doing the speaker shootout thing with all these crazy speakers, the ultimate speaker demo. And he handed me the guitar, and the moment I played one note, I'm like, this guitar's going down to E flat. So there are just certain Strats that if you own a Strat, it just needs to be a half step down. Just has to be. Hey, Bonjour. What's going on? Great to meet you. Hello, hello. I know you from YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, welcome aboard. Paris is one of the most enchanted, lovely cities in the world. My wife and I went there for our honeymoon. Many lovely memories. Great to see you here. Welcome. Awesome. All right, David Tedeschi, good morning. So the funny thing is, I do not have any of Joe's guitars, and it's a funny thing is that because I've known him for so long, and because there's enough of an association, there's a certain amount that I try and just kind of like, I don't, the worst thing that somebody could say would be like, oh, I get it. You just want to be a little Joe. And as much as part of me really, there's a huge amount of what inside me is motivated by that. Oh, awesome. Very kind. Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you. I will receive that. You know, the funny thing is that, you know, this particular guitar, there's a vibrato that Eric does. That's a particular. There's a track called "Forever Man" that was a pretty big hit in the very early, almost at the mid '80s, and Eric would do this particular vibrato like this. So, David, yeah. So the thing is, the guitar. You know, first of all, there's one of the other Strats that's here is an Yngwie Strat. I don't sound enough like Yngwie that people go, oh, I guess he's an Yngwie clone, right? You know, the Petrucci guitar. And as a general rule, I love, in fact, you know, the funny thing is there's a YouTube video there as well, signature guitars. The great thing about signature guitars, and I love them, and Joe's signature guitar, there was a thing that I did at the Ultimate Speaker demo where Ivan has sent me one of the Joe models, and they're great guitars. I just love them. But the thing is, I wouldn't want people to go, oh, I get it. He just wants to be Joe, right? It's just like, it's close enough to begin with that it's just like, but every time I play one of those guitars, I'm going like, they're great. But again, I'm kind of a Gibson guy these days. Different conversation. All that to say, this particular guitar, the moment I got it, I was like, oh, it's got to go down to E flat. And that's the thing. Matthew Stratton, what's going on, my man? A while, my man. Great to see you. Awesome. All right. So, again, another great comment. Amazing guitar. So, to the point of these signature instruments, this right here, and I'm going to tie this conversation in together, is a American Originals. I think it's a 62 Strat. And first of all, you know, I got this guitar, quote unquote, to review from Fender. There were a bunch of instruments. There's this, an American Originals 60s Tele Custom, an American Originals 70s Thin Line Telecaster, an American Originals 60s P-Bass, and there's a fifth guitar that I'm not remembering. I bought all four. They're phenomenal, worth every penny, and this guitar... Heck, I'm in the number 5 pickup selector, number 4. phenomenal guitar. But at E, all that stuff was hiding a half step away lower than the guitar would go. I was like, it's got to go down to E flat. I just knew it. The other thing is, traditionally, when I drop a guitar down a half step, I'll go from 9s. Generally, this guitar would at standard tuning, I'll put a 9 through 42 set on a Strat. Go down a half step, that goes to 1046 right away. The Yngwie Strat is at standard tuning. It's great. It's perfect. It's just fine. The Road Worn Strat, it immediately had to go down a half step. I just knew it. Like, you can tell, it's like it's almost like for anybody out there that drinks wine, when you first pop a bottle of wine, you're like, oh, it needs a couple minutes to open up. It's that same sort of vibe where you just kind of go, this needs to go down a half step, and that will allow the tone to open up. And this guitar just got a great sound. So the thing about the Yngwie Strat, the John Petrucci guitar, are there any other signature instruments? Yeah, the Marty Schwartz 335. Players who have spent decades playing through all their favorite guitars and all the other guitars that they chucked know exactly what they're looking for. So when they get a chance to put together a signature instrument, they really have a clear idea of, like, it needs to do this. And what's great about that is you get a chance to adopt. Thank you very much, Matthew. I love this guitar. Awesome. Thank you. How you been, man? What's going on? The machine. What was that crazy sampley thing that was your juice? Excellent work, my friend. He is a fellow YouTuber, and we were hanging out. We met through Sean Cannell, right? There's a guy named Sean Cannell that is a YouTuber influencer and inspirator. That I learned an awful lot from, and that's where I think Matthew and I met. All right, Sonny, what's going on, my friend? Great to see you. All right, so the Strat down a half step thing, if you've got a Strat and you're like, it just feels like it's close, but it doesn't want to get there, that's exactly what we were talking about, Bobby. So, I'm curious, Bobby, if you're still here, did you bring that guitar down a half step because you're like, this guitar just needs to live there? Or is it just because with Strats, they need to live down a half step? With me, it's a guitar by guitar thing. Certain guitars, I just play them and I'm like, you know what? It's just great as it is, right? Usually the instrument will kind of tell me, oh, just take me down a half step. And I've never had a guitar tell me that and it not be dramatically better afterwards. It just kind of adds this girth that, if you think about F. Steve Greenleaf, what's going on, my man? So I'm playing at F, is not? It's not that far. Matter of fact, though, there you can hear it. Hear that extra, there's girth, that note, that you're like, man, it feels like there's more to this guitar. By the way, one of the other things I discovered as I was tweaking tones for this thing was the place to find out how much or too much bass on your sound is not the treble string. It's literally just kind of hanging out. Playing across the range of string at different dynamic ranges and then adjusting and again, what's really cool about this little dealio right here is inside the editor, you can not only choose how much bass you want, but also the frequency that's at, and that is a big deal. The other thing is, as I've mentioned before, for those of you that watch either of those videos, this little depth control here is an overall adjustment for the just like the presence is kind of how much the presence on an amp happens in the power amp section, as does the depth of the resonance. But in the digital domain, there's no power amp section. But basically, this is kind of an overall sheen of top end and sheen of bottom end. And it allows you to kind of fine tune the frequency of where the bass control is sitting. And then on top of that, choose how much girth you want in the bottom end, or how lean you want it to be. And the same thing with the presence. And I've really found increasingly, both on real amps and in the box, that, well, hang on, fine. That is to say, I'm going to turn this up just a little tiny bit. So I'm going to bring the presence back. That may be subtle. It's not so subtle. It's that magic of that kind of that Fendery vibe, right? And this is a model of a deluxe reverb. Now, here's the depth control. Bring it down. Bring it up a little bit. A little more. Bring it up more than I'm going to want. It just gets a little flubby, but right around here, it, to me, is kind of like mastering for, oh, sorry, I did not go to the right screen. What a loser. So what I was doing was I was over here. So hold on, let me just do a quick reenactment. Presence down. Presence up a bit. Presence up a bunch more. Drop the depth. And all of a sudden, that little extra spank because of what's happening on the top end, meaning with what's happening that. I really liked it. I also need to talk about what I'm doing with the reverb here. So this is a big deal in Doug world. And this is, I saw a question come in, so let me just go ahead and grab this real quick. Kai, there we go, the MPC Live, there we go. That's right, we met in Vegas. And of course, we met through the course. There we go, great to see you, my friend. Hold on a second. Let's hear some Jimi Hendrix. That's, gosh, what have I got? First of all, hello. That's right. Sorry, that was terrible, but at least I tried. You got to give a guy something for a college try. When you play an alternate tuning, are you just playing that fret position, or are you thinking of the notes having to adjust your brain? That's a great question. I very rarely play in an alternate tuning, and I think the guy that was living in an alternate tuning may no longer be there. Hang on. I'm going to do something and risk embarrassing myself, but you know what? I'm okay with that. Hang on a second here. All right, let's try this. Now, generally speaking, hang on. Sorry, I'm on the wrong window here. Hello, over here. There we go. Hello. This guitar used to be kind of at some sort of slide tune. I don't necessarily remember. Oops, sorry. Gotta be careful when the strings are a little thin. So to answer your question, normally, you know, when I use some sort of slide tuning, I'm not really thinking about the notes. I'm kind of playing by the frets, right? As I start riffing around down there, this is basically a D, so that's another D, so that's going to be a C, that's going to be A, and so at that point, and I know that's going to be a G. There's my B. Sorry, my bad. That's going to be my right. Sorry, that's my A. Because this string's tuned down a whole step. There's my A, G, F, and that would be an E. And there that is. So And quite often I'll be thinking about playing the minor pentatonic. That's my 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 1. What's kind of cool about that makes it go to kind of walks in the minor pentatonic. Here's your 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 1, and that's doubled. There's 1, flat 3, 4, flat 5, and as you kind of walk through this, so you kind of have to because the instinct is to double that right there. That's a D. But you got it. What's kind of cool is you're kind of... So I've got the G turned up to a G sharp. So if you would normally play a G there, it's going to be, you have to go that. So anything you would play pentatonic here, you have to move down a half step or a fret. So you kind of learn to motor around as it relates to that. So yeah, in that instance, to answer your question, I do, depending on what I'm playing, but at the point... so on and so forth. All right. I digress. Can you hook your cortex with that fret and raise the pitch up a half step and see it retains the E flat vibe? I will, but not today because it's kind of over there amidst a bunch of other stuff. But that's a great question. Very great question. What's going on, David? How you doing, my man? Pleasure to see you. Pleasure to see you. Okay, let me just jump over here. By the way, Steve Greenleaf, sorry, I was in the midst of something. Hello, my dear friend. Great to see you. Buenos días. Mi buen amigo de muchos años pasado. Y ahora también. All right. If someone, this is actually an important question that I've got to find the answer to. Awesome, Eric. Thank you very much. You know, it's an interesting thing. Melissa might be listening, so I have to be careful how loud I say this. This guitar doesn't get played enough, but it has its place. And there's stuff that's yet to be done on this instrument. These are actually, I'm a DiMarzio endorser, but my buddies at Solo Dallas sent me these pickups. There's a funny thing, another YouTube video waiting to be made about T-top pickups. The hilarious thing is that when I was kind of growing up in my late teens and early 20s, the last thing people wanted in their guitars was these T-tops. Oh, get those out of there. Put some Duncans, put some DiMarzios in there. Just get that out of there. Now, all of a sudden, the market for T-tops has gone through the roof. I mean, fetching untold hundreds of dollars for pickups that people couldn't wait to get out of their guitars. They actually sound great. But this guitar doesn't get played enough. But if you look at the finish, come on, there we go. It's flamey. It's red. It's hold on. There we go. It's a gorgeous guitar, and it actually doesn't get played enough. But it's there's an Ampeg V4. There's the chair, by the way. I'm not that old and creaky. Ampeg V4 is the amp. There's a Stones amp. Not that one, but it was a Dixie Dregs amp. It's a great amp. And when I went to check that amp out, the guy had basically, one of these DCs, a double cut. And I played through that thing. And I was like, because it doesn't have this upper bout here, it sounds different. And I was like, wow, what a groovy sounding guitar. That little bit of wood difference in the fact that it's not just that amount of wood, but the vibrations move differently through the guitar, at least I believe. So the point being is that as an end result, it sounds different and responds differently. Hold on. Wrong guitar. Oh, I had the high string to D, right? There's a lot of notes waiting to be played on this guitar, and at some point I'm probably going to spend a lot of time playing it. It's a great instrument. But it's just kind of very patiently waiting its turn. All that to say, it is a really special guitar, and it sounds completely different than all my other Les Pauls. And what's really interesting is it's got this dual, control thing no matter which position you're in, which is, again, one of the other things that makes it really unique. My apologies if that was pokey. Bruce, what's going on? You are a man that knows a keen deal. That's such a deal. I can't wait to take that. But on second thought, nah. Hey, Bruce, by the way, I'm playing through the IK stuff. For anybody who doesn't know Bruce, that's my buddy Bruce Adolph. He is the founder and publisher of Worship Musician Magazine and also Collectible Guitar Magazine. A dear friend, and he knows a thing or two about vintage guitars. He also does the Seattle Tacoma Guitar Festival and the OC Vibe Guitar Festival. And I got a chance to play there this last year with Larry Mitchell. Larry and I both did our own sets, and then we got a chance to jam. Dear friend and fellow gear fanatic. That's a really pretty sound. So I've got to get out of here because I've got a day of teaching here, and I want to spend some time prepping for that. But the last thing I want to say is this. Well, actually, not the last thing. Thank you for hanging out. Again, every time we do this, I'm always... Social media, for me, is actually a very social thing. I don't spend a lot of time with friends in real life. I'm a little hunkered down kind of doing, especially right now in this YouTube moment in my life. I'm getting serious about YouTube, and the Instagram is going to come along real soon. Anil, thank you, my friend. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. And I always appreciate your questions. and you, for that matter. So the thing is that, the ability to kind of have this social interaction around gear, it's kind of like the combination of I do spend some time on, the boogie board, which is where I met Albert. And, there is a social dimension around gear that is a very unique thing. I guess there are other communities, around cars and whatnot, that have their group of people that get together. But I can't drive a car on a live stream unless I'm driving and live streaming at the same time, which is generally not a great idea. But this ability to kind of go to talk about stuff, and I'm like, all right, well, let's grab a guitar that's at a different tuning. By the way, drop D. Albert, your enthusiasm is always greatly appreciated, my dear friend. You the man. And thanks again on the amp. That thing's amazing. I'm a big believer in knowing the note names. So because that D, F, G, A, C, D, those are notes of the D minor pentatonic. So D, D, F, G, A, C, D allows us to be able to track that. And so when I'm doing a drop D, another place, that's arguably the most common place for a quote-unquote altered tuning is just to drop that low E string down a whole step. So in that particular instance, I'm very much tracking the notes because everything else is still E, A, D, G, B, E with just that low D down there. But as I was saying, you need to be thinking about this here, and I spend so much time in E. I'm looking for that D, though. By the way, I want to encourage you to spend some time. Work on the chromaticism. That's the flat 7, flat 7, 7, 1, flat 3 and 4, flat 3, 3, 4, flat 5, 5, flat 7, 1, flat 7, 7. By the way, I went to talk about something though. Hey, Dr. Phil. Thanks again, my man. I look forward to that. So the other thing is there are all these, I got to make a video also on boogie acronyms, or maybe just acronyms to begin with. Ron, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a great day. God bless you. And keep that goatee flowing. I just need to pop in and talk a little bit about, I touched on it for just a second, but I want to finish that thought. The pre-delay on the reverb there is this bit. So when you're trying to create a sound where there's a lot of reverb, adding that pre-delay, it means before the first quote-unquote early reflection. Hold on, let me bring that pre-delay up a bunch. And now ease it back. There it's noticeable, but here, you don't really notice the pre-delay in there, but still. But what it does is it allows you to preserve the sanctity of the transient. And that pick attack is really important. That's one of my favorite places and one of my favorite things about reverb. That little bit of pre-delay just kind of gives you that little breath, again, between when you hit the string and when the reverb's there. And as you kind of keep playing through notes, you don't notice that there's pre-delay there, other than the fact that that little bit of a gap there between when you play the note and when the reverb kicks in, like, if you will, a delay. It allows you to create this little bit of extra space that allows you to preserve the sound of the transient again, the original pick attack, so that you can have more reverb, which is a beautiful thing, right? That wash of reverb. Is very pretty, but if you got, well, hold on, let me just get rid of this real quick. Get rid of the pre-delay. Here we go. Tone control, right? It just gets a little like a bunch of reverb. Gonna get the pre-delay back in, then. And part of it is the entire bloom, if you will, of the delay happens far enough from the original note that it's a different vibe. And it gives you the ability to play without the reverb just being right on your tail end. So it's subtle, but as you're playing, it's a big deal. Andrew with the awesome hair. No, it's Andrew with the good hair, right? Great to see you, my friend. It was a pleasure to hang out with you at NAMM. I trust you are doing great. Always a pleasure. Hello, hello, hello. That Vox wah-wah pedal, I keep thinking about that. Hello, my friend. Dr. Phil, sounds like a pentatonic scale. You got that. Dr. Phil, you were never too late to the party. You're just right on time. But speaking of which, I got a day of teaching, and I'm going to be late to the party if I don't get rolling. Thank you again. What a pleasure to spend my Saturday morning with you. Thank you for spending your time with me. I'll see you next Saturday.